Hey guys, welcome back to Jesus Will Bucks, the podcast. We are on episode 5, which is crazy that we've done 4 already. We've talked about a whole bunch of topics, from why some people are spiritual but not religious to what faith actually looks like in practice. And today we're going to be going into a topic that I think a lot of people exploring faith or in faith themselves struggle with, which is whether or not forgiveness is really possible. I've scoured the country to bring you the most diverse, exciting group of people to speak to on every single episode, and today's episode is no exception. So I'm joined by my friend Shirley.
Hi.
Shirley's a uni graduate and a lawyer. We met when I was at Oxford Uni with her, playing rugby, and yeah, we've had a great friendship since then. It was friendship at first sight, I think.
Yeah.
So welcome to the podcast, Shirley. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. How's your day been? What have you been up to?
It's been good. I've just been at work. I still work part-time in some bars because I work for a charity doing pro bono law and the pay is not amazing. So just do a few extra shifts to bump that up. But yeah, no, it's been good. Ireland's playing the rugby at the moment, so I was watching that while I was working.
How are they doing?
They were losing to South Africa, but it was a good game.
So I heard you had an unpopular opinion, which is that you don't think Jesus will Bucks.
I do not think Jesus would have won Bucks. No.
I'll give you the floor. Explain.
Well, personally, I know a lot of people love them, but I just can't help but think that they are really disgustingly looking. And I don't think they're as breathable as people think when you actually get warmed up and go to hot countries. Like, I remember I saw someone step out of their Birkenstock and their footprint was literally embedded in sweat in their shoe. And I was looking at it thinking, this is not sanitary. This is why nurses wear Crocs and not Birkenstocks. And so, yeah, I don't know. I just think Jesus was a holy and sanitary man that would have worn Crocs instead.
You can get PVC Bucks now, though. Does that change your opinion?
They probably still look bad, though.
Okay, fair.
All opinions are of my own and do not reflect the company.
No, that's fair. I like my Crocs. I also like my Bucks, so... I guess Jesus wore Bucks and Crocs is too long to fit on the back of a...
Yeah, they
of a
have
cue
the same
card,
ring
but-
to it.
But yeah. So...
He was also poor and immaterial. Like, didn't like materialistic things. He would have gone for the option that was poorer. So really, he would have been in Lidl's middle aisle.
Maybe he had not real Birkenstocks, or maybe he would have bought them off vintage.
Maybe vintage Birks.
Yeah.
Maybe we can come to a compromise.
All right, and then go-to coffee order. What are you getting?
See, I would love to say I'm a coffee babe, but I love all the milk and froth and the syrup. Like, I do drink coffee every day, but I'm not a real true coffee fan because I need all the flavours. But I would say soya mocha, sometimes with hazelnut syrup. I love me a Christmas drink as well.
Okay, I can half get on board with that.
Tastes like Ferrero Rocher.
As long as it's not one of those like double pump 2 vanilla frappuccino something.
No, I still like to taste coffee, but I just don't like it on its own. Well, I would drink it, but I would rather... It's not my preference.
That's fair enough.
Yeah, I always get made fun of at work by my colleagues.
You
They're like
should.
hardcore drink filtered coffee or like cafetiere coffee. Just as it comes, no sugar, no milk, nothing. And I'm always like, give me a minute. I'm going to go to the kitchen and grab my milk and my syrup and I'll be back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not a true lawyer just yet. Yeah.
That's what I'd go for. A long black or a flat white. Oat milk.
Oh, you're one of these efficient orderers.
Yeah. Well, you know I used to be a barista, so...
Oh, yeah, that's true. I always wanted to be barista trained. I just haven't got there yet.
Let's make it happen.
You're gonna train me.
Yeah.
We've had this discussion.
We have, and we're
I'm
meant to do
waiting.
the bartender course as well.
Oh, I could teach you how to be a bartender.
Amazing. Trade.
There
Perfect. Okay. And then just so we're all on the same page, if you had to describe your faith background in a few words, what would you say?
So I was raised by a Roman Catholic family, Irish Catholic family as well. As I grew up, I started going to a youth church that doesn't really have a denomination, but I would suppose it's closely aligned with maybe evangelical in terms of a denomination, but it's not really got a set denomination. And now I actually go to both. So I just find my preferences change and adjust, but I love them for different things. You know, with the Catholic Church, I feel like you find God in the quiet, and with the say more evangelical church, you find God in the noise. And I love both. I say they serve different purposes, and I learn things from both of them.
Cool. Was growing up Catholic and then having these evangelical like experiences and going to that church now at the same time, was that ever confusing or conflicting?
Yeah, it can be, because a lot of other Christian denominations find a lot of issue with the Catholic Church in terms of how ritualistic it is, and certain aspects of it that are in addition to a lot of the denominations. For example, the extra prayers and praying to saints and praying to Mary are things that other denominations wouldn't do. They would say, some would say it's idolatry. So there was a lot of contention. I did learn a lot of lessons from both. Also, people take personal issue with the church itself and kind of how much wealth it has compared to how much it maybe does for charity. But one thing I do really like about the Roman Catholic Church is it is built on Peter. And I do think it varies by pope. So the pope that we just had has sadly passed away. But he was a liberation theologist from South America. And he really took interest from kind of the liberation theologist point of view, that Jesus was a minimalist who lived with very little material things. And so everyone, even if you're not poor, should try and live like that, with very little weight on material things, and spending little money on yourself and giving it to charity. So he didn't wear the jewels and things, or
Oh yeah, I read about this. And he refused like the massive salary, right?
Exactly. Yeah, he stood by that and lived by that, and I think that's very powerful. So I do think there's ways of rationalizing contention, but at the end of the day, the very fact that we have different denominations is not exactly in line with what Jesus was going for. So I think you can pick and choose. Exactly. You can pick and choose which one, but the fact that we put ourselves and split ourselves up into boxes with different labels in itself is not really helpful. So I really don't get caught up on which one I'm at, because I think they're all part of the same church at the end of the day.
Yeah. I mean, it's the thing that people say, if you follow the Nicene Creed, i.e. the things that we believe make us Christian, and therefore affirming your belief in Jesus, then it doesn't really matter what your denomination is, because those are the fundamental things that we believe in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think next season I definitely want to do an episode on denominations and how that came about, what it means, how it affects Christians, I guess. I think that would be quite interesting. Maybe you should come back.
Maybe. Yeah, there's so much to say. So.
Yeah. So today, obviously, we're looking at forgiveness. Oh wait, before we do that, for people who might have tuned in and don't know about my story, obviously you do, but I'll recap. I grew up in an evangelical small church household as a child. Around 13, went away from faith for like 7-8 years. Essentially did my own thing, very much did my own thing. Came to university, had some really awful things happen, and then in that time period ended up finding my faith again. So then I found it for myself and developed a personal relationship with Jesus, my own faith as opposed to inherited beliefs from my mom and everyone else. And then I got baptized, and now here we are. So that's me. But yeah, so what would you say forgiveness is? It's a big question. Answer it.
It is a massive question. To be honest, I think even after this whole discussion, we might still be answering it. I think it's a process. And an end point. I think it's both. I don't think it's easy, but I think it's the goal. Coming from a Christian point of view, the main message, I mean, from any passage about forgiveness in the Bible is that you should, and that you should continue to do so, whether or not somebody deserves it or knows you do. It's kind of an absolute, and it's an inherent process, whether or not somebody else knows you've forgiven them. It's more your peace of mind and your kind of conscience that goes through that process, I would say. But yeah, I do think there are many ways of defining it. And yeah, what do you think?
I really like that definition. I'd agree with the fact for sure that it's a process and it's not something that happens overnight at all. I also like the fact that you said something like it's something you have to keep on doing. So yeah, it's like an active thing. It's not just you wake up one Tuesday morning and you're like, I forgive him, and then it's just you never feel like anger or pain or resentment towards that person or even the situation. I think it is something you have to keep choosing to do, and that is why it is a process. That's one of the reasons why it's difficult. Yeah, I think it can be a selfless thing sometimes, depending on what the situation is. I also think personally it's one of the hardest things that I find to do, especially like going from not being a Christian and living a life where I very much like not enjoyed, but I resented people and didn't feel like I needed to apologize or do anything with that. In my head, I was like, if someone's hurt me, that's their business. Like, that's actually nothing to do with me. Like,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? And then coming back into faith and hearing that I actually have to forgive and keep forgiving and not like seek revenge and this kind of thing. That was difficult. I can't lie. But yeah,
But that's the goal. When I say the goal, like if you're trying to live a Christian lifestyle, and also most other religions, I'd say, the have a strong emphasis on forgiveness. But you are supposed to be able to wake up on a Tuesday morning and say, I forgive them. The problem is that we're all human, so we don't. I think most people actually don't really forgive, not in its true form, not how we should, if you're living by the Bible. But that's why I said it's a journey, not because forgiveness itself should be a journey. It's supposed to be quite
like
quick.
immediate.
Yeah, it's supposed to be quite quick succession, but it's a journey because we are human, and it's difficult, and that's why it takes time. It's less than ideal, but on the other hand, kind of lends itself to its authenticity, because once it takes time and you've worked your way through kind of getting to that point, hopefully it should then last rather than quickly forgiving and then going back on it. But then you can argue that's not really forgiveness anyway.
Yeah. How do you see forgiveness differing from reconciliation or forgetting? Because one thing a lot of people have said to me when I've had, discussions about forgiveness, Christianity, etc., is like, oh, like how forgiving someone, if I forgive X person or this situation, that means that I'm saying that it's okay, and that means that I'm saying that it's right, or I can't forgive them and then just forget what they've done. So how would you?
Well, I take that in two parts, because I would say that forgiveness is not justifying what someone's done or saying it's right or wrong. I don't think it's making a moral comment on anyone else except a moral comment on your own morality for being able to forgive. So I don't think it lends itself to a wider conclusion or, an extension that you can find. So, yeah, I wouldn't say that there's ramifications to forgiveness that lend itself to whether or not somebody's right or wrong, or is or is not worthy of being forgiven. But reconciliation, in its kind of English meaning, is a step beyond forgiveness, or maybe the final part of forgiveness, where you've forgiven someone and then you recuperate your friendship, or you get back to that point of where you were. So potentially the end stage, because arguably if you've forgiven but you've chosen not to be a part of that life anymore, you haven't really forgiven. You've maybe let it go, but forgiveness is moving on, and you've not really moved on if that person's not moving with you, in my opinion. Because if but for what they've done, you would still be friends, then you haven't really forgiven what they've done. But reconciliation in terms of the Bible is a whole bigger concept of what Christ did for us when he died for our sins on the cross, so that God could reconcile with humanity. So that's the ultimate forgiveness. That's, once again, maybe the goal, the pinnacle of forgiveness, something unachievable. None of us can do it. Our sacrifice wouldn't amount to that. But while it's this kind of beacon of forgiveness, that lends itself to what we're aiming towards by being able to kind of do that as the final stage of forgiveness, I would say. In terms of forgetting, I think people say forgive and forget. I would agree with that in terms of forgetting as a part of forgiveness. If you keep bringing it up and going over it, then potentially you've not forgiven. Unless you're obviously bringing it up as like an anecdote and you can laugh about it maybe. But people also say you can forgive, but you won't forget. But then you've not forgiven, because if you keep bringing it up, you've not gone through that process. You haven't actually forgiven them. You haven't alleviated your own burden. So it's pointless, I say. But yeah, I would say reconciliation and forgetting are both parts of forgiveness. They're stages of it. But the ultimate kind of umbrella is the forgiveness itself. But I don't know, would you make
I had a question, actually. When you were saying, like, if you're not moving on with that person, then that's kind of potentially not part of the forgiveness. What would you say to someone who's maybe in a situation where the person they're forgiving is going to continue doing those hurtful behaviours? So they forgive, but it's not actually, you know, like, it's not useful or helpful for them to keep that person in their life. Like, say, even if they wanted to, then you think that they, like, have they still achieved forgiveness, or is it, like, not through any fault of their own, they haven't been able to complete that last step?
I think it varies, because if you don't want to be around someone because they're not good for you, then that's different to not being around, wanting to be around someone because they've done something to you.
Right, okay.
I would say if they keep doing the same thing, the idea of forgiveness is to keep forgiving.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you jump to Matthew, they asked Jesus, how many times do you forgive? 7 times. And Jesus says, 7 times, 70 times 7, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it just, the point is it's meant to be endless. And if you want to take his example, I mean, he died on the cross, and the first thing he did is visited the people that didn't necessarily treat him right, or Peter, who denied him, you know. He shows us that if he shows us time and time again that he could forgive and move on and spend time around people that maybe didn't necessarily deserve it, or that might have done it again. I mean, Peter denied him 3 times the night he died. If the same thing had happened all over again 3 days later, would he have acted differently? We don't know. But, you know, Jesus was willing to take that chance and just keep going, keep meeting them. He forgave Judas, who betrayed him. So I think that people can say, you know, for my mental health and for practicality, I need to remove myself from someone. And I get that. I would do the same probably. But I think if I was answering in terms of what Jesus would say, I think that he would keep forgiving. But choosing who you spend time with is also important. We'll say obviously your health is important, and kind of making distance from people and making healthy boundaries is important. But I think that that's a balance. Is it because you've not forgiven them, or is it because they're not good for you and you know that it's not going to get better after having a conversation? Because, for example, I didn't see Jesus running back to the temple where the pharaohs were. He didn't make time for them all the time. They upset him. He forgave them and moved on. He didn't run back to hang out with them all the time. So I don't think you need to go above and beyond to make it a point. But I would say that if you've just cut someone off easily because of a mistake that you've said you've forgiven them for, then arguably you haven't forgiven them. But I do think it's internal reflection. So it does vary.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you agree.
I think I agree generally. Like, I think reconciliation is difficult, obviously. It is an individual thing. It depends on where you're coming from, I guess, and also it depends on the person's willingness, because obviously if you, in a situation where you say to someone, I'm sorry, and then continue to do the hurtful behaviours or the thing that you've said sorry for, then I would argue the apology almost becomes null and void if your actions aren't reflecting your words. So if both of you are able to sit down and you're committed to saying, you know what, I made a mistake, I'm sorry, and then you work past it, then for sure, like, reconciliation is a possibility. I think it also depends on not necessarily what's been done, because I don't think there's anything that is unforgivable. Like, definitely not in the eyes of God. But I think it depends on how, like, it depends on the place that the person who is forgiving you is in, and whether or not they're able at that point in time to turn around and say, you know what, let's work through this. And I think that's why you see, you know, like, every family has their issues, and you see families have these big problems, and then maybe 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, they're then able to, like, openly sit and be like, okay, let's discuss it, let's come to some kind of mediation, reconciliation thing, because it's taken them that long to actually be able to do that in any kind of positive way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But do you think that maybe you're basing forgiveness there slightly on the importance of an apology?
No, I don't think you need an apology in order to forgive. I definitely used to. Yeah, I mean, my dad isn't around, and he's never been around since, like, from when I was born. And for me, I carried a lot of anger and resentment towards him for, like, a long time. I'd say like 17, 18 years of my life. And I was waiting constantly for him to reach out and apologize. And then I'd be like, I'm not going to forgive you, type thing. But at some point, I realized that me, like, not forgiving him was essentially me drinking poison and wanting him to, like, get sick. It was never going to happen, and all it was doing was eating away at me. So that experience reframed my idea on forgiveness, because if we all waited for people to apologise to us for certain situations before we decided whether or not we were going to forgive them, we'd be waiting an awfully long time, and our hearts would just be getting so sick. So yeah, I don't think it needs an apology. Like, obviously it's nice to get an apology in a situation where you think you've been wronged, but I don't think it's a necessity.
I agree completely, but I also think the majority of forgiveness is without apology. That's what I meant at the start when I said it's more for yourself, because separate to whether someone wants to apologize or not, it's your choice whether you forgive them or not. And some people base that on atonement, whether or not someone is sorry.
Mm.
But I completely agree with you. I mean, more often than not, people aren't going to be. And you holding on to that resentment is punishing yourself for somebody else's actions. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Something else you said that's interesting is about families, because, you know, you said, what if you keep doing the same thing over and over, would you still separate yourselves? I think that's part of being in a parent-child relationship, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not a mother, but if I had a teenager, I know a lot of people struggle with teenagers and disrespect and not being listened to, and it goes back and forth. I know I was not the easiest child either.
Me neither, don't worry.
But you know, your parent will forgive you and keep going and keep going and keep going, kind of like the relationship that everybody has with God. But they don't, you know, turn around and say, oh, actually, I need to distance myself now, because, I mean, some do. But the idea is that you don't, you know, you just keep forgiving, even though they repeat themselves, because it's their lesson to learn from what they're doing, but it's your lesson to keep forgiving. You know, I don't think frequency should impact relationship if you're truly forgiving. Yeah.
I had a question that one of my co-workers asked me when I was in the cafe, and she's very much an atheist. I said it like that because she defines herself as like a protest atheist, I think, which is like very anti-religion generally.
Anti-theist.
Yes. Yeah. So she said that one thing she doesn't understand at all is the concept of Christianity. It's that this guy died for everyone's sins, but she hasn't done anything that's bad enough that anyone needed to die for her. So she doesn't think that she needs, like, God. Like, what would you say to that, or how would you approach that?
Well, I think that she is viewing herself too singularly. I mean, he didn't die for each and every one of us because we all needed that level of atonement, but because humanity does.
Mm.
We act as a being. Yeah, we are a species that continues to wrong each other and wrong the planet and do awful things on a daily basis. I have not, you know, committed a number of crimes that I would count as really terrible sins.
Or even if you had, you wouldn't admit to it because you're a lawyer.
That's true.
That's
very true. But I still need that kind of saving from sin, the tendency to sin. Because, I mean, I guess it boils down to, is one sin worse than another, right? So in the Bible, there's no hierarchy, except maybe the Ten Commandments, but there's no hierarchy of sin, you know. One murderer, one thief, and one fraudster. Although in a legal system you're given different sentencing for each crime, in God's eyes, if you atone, that's it, you're forgiven. So she might have not done murder or, you know, some of the very serious crimes that we also know as sins, but she may have lied, she may have disrespected a parent or a friend, she might have stolen something like an idea or claimed credit for something that wasn't hers. She might have been jealous of someone. Those things are still sins, and he died for every sin. So I get why she's questioning it, but she's viewing her sin as lesser than somebody else's. But we believe that in God's eye, everyone's a sinner. Every sin is a sin. So he died for all of them. And then because of that, we all needed atonement. Yeah, I don't know. How did you answer?
I knew you were going to answer me that. I said something that brushed alongside that, essentially. I didn't go as deep into it because honestly, I was a month into having picked up the Bible again and I was like,
Good question.
yeah, let me get back to you on that one. But yeah, I kind of just said that even though we might not think that we are like massive sinners and have done awful things, like we're not comparing ourselves to, you know, people in history that we've been told are like heinous, like unforgivable acts, etc. We've still done things that are sin. So I guess what you said, but on a very, very basic level, without too much backing.
To the point.
Yeah.
Much more efficient.
Yeah. But yeah, I told her to check out like Mark. That's a short one, right?
Gospel.
Yeah. Yeah. Mark didn't like writing too much.
No. Succinct. Yeah.
Huh?
Succinct.
Yeah. To the point. I like Mark.
Yeah. Even the name.
Yeah.
Succinct. Mark even means just to leave a little line.
I feel
Carry
like,
on.
have you watched Hamilton?
Yeah.
So you know when he's like, why do you write like I'm running out of time? And I write,
Yeah.
that's Matthew.
Yeah.
And then Mark is like...
Mark's just the one that never writes anything down.
Mark's like, his mom sat him down and was like, you have to write 10 lines. And he was like, he got a pen and he was like...
No, he was like, Mark's work was proofread by his mom. And she was like, you don't need that. You don't need that. Yeah.
But yeah, why do you think that forgiveness is so hard emotionally and spiritually for people, not just Christians, just generally? I think it's a concept that we find really difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I have not studied kind of psychology or human development at all, but I do feel like it's an inherent difficulty. Most people don't seem to... It's nobody's natural thought process. In the animal kingdom, you see someone get wronged by another animal. You don't often see them kind of reconciling afterwards if they've had a big enough fight. But sometimes you do. Say, I'm thinking about lions fighting over girls right now. The one lion normally wins, the other one's normally dead.
Yeah. A lot of animals fight to the death, don't they? Like
Yeah.
once a wrong has happened.
Yeah, some seriously dramatic lack of forgiveness.
Gladiators.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? So I do think it's not inherent, but I think that's why it's so interesting and needed, that it's one of the things that God focuses on, because he didn't make us in human nature with the tendency to forgive, or we did, and then after original sin, if you believe quite literally in like the switch from Adam and Eve after she bit the apple, if we then fell into original sin, which is a Catholic teaching, maybe we lost the tendency, but at the end of the day right now I wouldn't say it's human nature to forgive. So it's difficult because it goes against your natural instincts. But then I think it's so necessary that you just have to want to work on it. I think it does vary by what's happened to you. Not that it should, but that in the reality of things, it does. I'd probably forgive someone that stepped on my shoe in a club that's drunk a lot more the first time maybe than the second. I give that example because I have customers step on my shoes all the time, and I love my trainers, so it does hurt me a little bit. But I would, you just forgive them because it's like, if they didn't mean it, they're drunk, they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But then if they did mean it, if you were having a confrontation with them and they just stepped on your shoe because they wanted to, it might be a little bit harder to forgive. But then that's easier to forgive than something more serious than someone stepping on your shoe. Like if someone stole your idea, ran off with it. Obviously there's laws against that, but say you wanted to do something for your birthday, something trivial, but say you wanted to go to Winter Wonderland for your birthday, and then your friend's birthday's the week before and they just stole the idea and everyone went to Winter Wonderland for their birthday. You might be really upset, say, but then again, you would be less so upset than if someone, cheated on you. So I think we make levels because of how we work. Society works with hierarchies. We work with a moral code that does have degrees and is reflected by law that, has degrees that sometimes reflect morality but often don't. So it's difficult on levels. But I think you have to make a conscious effort to want to forgive. I say this as someone who forgives really, really easily to strangers.
Has it always been like that?
Forgiving easy, yeah. For strangers, I forgive really easily. I'm a very forgiving person, but for people that are very close to me, I do struggle. I thought I was very forgiving, but I realized I have a good memory and I don't forget. And then I'm sat there like, okay, obviously you physically can't wipe your brain, but if I remember and it still hurts me, then I haven't forgiven. So that's something I've come to find out recently, actually, maybe in the last few months, and I'm working on. So yeah, I'm speaking a lot about a subject that I fall short on, but I think that's the reality for everyone. For Christians, it's the goal, it's the purpose, it's what we work towards, but it's a journey, as I said, and everyone's on it constantly. But yeah, I think it's hard because it is hard, but it's meant to be hard. It's meant to be development. If there's no challenge, there's no growth. Yeah.
I mean, me too, struggling with it.
Yeah.
I think it was out of all the things that you read about in the Bible and that you but want to change when you become a Christian in order to be more like Jesus, forgiving people was the hardest one for me. You know that line that says, "Vengeance is mine, says the Lord." I was sat like, it was like, you shouldn't drink to excess. I was like, that's fine. It was like, you shouldn't lie, you shouldn't steal. It was like, tick, tick can do that. It was like, vengeance is mine. I was like, oh. Like, genuinely.
But were you the revenge type?
I loved revenge.
Really?
Yeah.
I just
like,
think...
I was big on, I'm a very, I don't want to say, like, I'm an empath, but you just got the ick. Your face then. You know what I mean? I feel emotions quite deeply. Yeah. And I think you know that, like, you've seen it at uni. So when people make me really happy, then I feel that. I love really hard. But then when people make me sad or I feel hurt, I feel that really deeply as well. So my thing was always, okay, if you've hurt me this much, you don't even know how much that hurts. So I'm going to do something to you that's going to show you how much that hurts.
And how did you feel after?
That's the thing. I didn't feel good. I didn't get anything out of it. I either felt like, okay, that hasn't actually hurt you as much as I was hurt in the first place, or I was just like, okay, well, now you're hurt, and by the time this has come round, I've actually kind of got over the original thing. Like, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was, do you know what I mean? So I didn't gain anything from it, but...
How many siblings do you have, Alex?
I mean, I have millions of brothers and sisters in Christ.
That is true, but in the domestic domain, how many?
I have 0.
Yeah. I think this is a lesson you learn as a child. For a lot of people, you don't get that far if you have siblings, right? Because so I'm one of 8 and I'm the youngest. So I spent my life being terrorized. Okay, you learn from a young age, what revenge feels like, I guess. I mean, not everyone. Maybe I'm speaking for myself, but I remember distinctly one time one of my brothers. He hadn't done anything to me that day, but I had just thought in my head, this boy is always making me miserable. You know, my brothers were really rough with me, and I'm the youngest, so I didn't, I didn't stand a chance. And I just decided to kick him where it really hurts because I'd just seen it in Annie, the musical, and I thought, I can do that. So I did it because in my head I was like, yeah, he deserves it. And he just started crying. And I looked at him, and I must have been like 6. And I thought, I feel so bad. That didn't help. So I learned from very young that revenge wasn't going to get me anywhere. That didn't make forgiving any easier because we will continue to fight forever because that's my brothers. But I love them. But yeah, I think I learned from a young age with any of them, and even with what they did to me. I think collectively you realize revenge doesn't feel better, and then that neither of you have anything to gain. But I do understand because you see it in the films and TV shows and stuff. It does seem so sweet when it works out, but I just think
It never is.
no, you just feel
Actually never
terrible.
is.
But that's good in a way because it's a testament to you as a person that you feel bad, that you have that moral compass and that character.
Yeah.
If you didn't, then I'd, maybe question
We'd maybe not be doing this
if
episode.
you were an empath or not. Yeah. Maybe your faith a little bit. But yeah, it's hard, but it's a process. And it's also the actual healthier and maybe easier alternative. I mean, we're talking about how hard forgiveness is, but we should talk about how hard not forgiving is. If you don't forgive, you just sit with something on your heart, it weighs you down. You talked about poison. It just negatively affects you. It's not healthy, it's not helping. And you might be weighed down by something that the other person or people don't even care about. And that even stings worse, But I think maybe some people find that easier than forgiving, but I think that that's harder. Just being bogged down by all of that negative emotion,
Yeah.
But then that lends into what we're talking about a little bit, that maybe forgiving is liberating.
Yeah. I mean, there's also the Bible idea, right? I mean, we're both coming at this from a Christian point of view, but that an eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind. So it's essentially that if we all went around saying this person's done this wrong thing to me, I'm going to get them back, we'd all just be blind because we've all done something to somebody. Even if we think we're a good person, at some point we've hurt someone.
Yeah. And I think Jesus bridged that gap. It says in the Old Testament, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth.
Yeah.
Cheek for a cheek. And then Jesus, he addresses it very directly and says, turn the other cheek. You have another cheek to turn. You just keep going. 70 times 7, say.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree completely. If there's no gain or growth from vengeance, it can make you stagnant.
So when you were saying that sometimes you found it difficult to forgive like people who are close to you as opposed to strangers, how did you navigate that?
That's a great question. So I have unorthodox relationships with my family. For example, my dad passed away last year, and I love him dearly. I have very fond memories, but he was an alcoholic. He was in and out of my life, and he didn't always make good choices. And I struggled throughout my teenagehood and young adulthood to kind of become okay with that and forgive him for the past and move on. I did. I moved on and I saw him frequently and I never brought it up, but I was forgetting. I wasn't forgiving. It was when he passed away, and I shouldn't take that extremity, but it's kind of a lesson I didn't know I needed to learn, that I hadn't kind of got around to forgiving just yet. That I finally found forgiveness for him and I understood him better, and I thought about what he'd experienced, because he lost his dad young, when he just 3 days before his 21st birthday, quite suddenly. And then I lost mine at 22, just 3 months after my 22nd birthday. So I felt like I understood him better, and that helped me to find forgiveness. But it took a lot of work. I mean, years of work. I'd been going to my youth church since I was 16, so it took me 6 years to come to forgiveness for him. And that obviously is not exactly what the Bible intended. But that's what I mean when I say it's a journey. We'll say I forgave him because I understood him. And that shouldn't be a prerequisite. As I was saying, you should be able to forgive for your own sake and not for theirs. I mean, he never apologized. I'm sure he didn't even realize what he'd done or thought about it. But then I can't know that. But I should have forgiven for my own peace of mind. Like, I look back on the years that I could have saved myself. Obviously, hindsight is a blessing. But, if you're going to get to the same end goal, then maybe I could have tried harder to shorten the race. But then at the same time, everyone takes different amounts of time. It's a process. I'm only human. So, yeah, I do think it's hard. I know it's hard. I'm still on that path with certain other family members. But it's a path I'm willing to be on and that I keep working on. But also, I think forgiving yourself is really hard.
I just want to say, I think you're giving yourself less credit than you deserve for that. Like, what you've spoken about is obviously, like, I can't imagine how difficult that is, but it's also, like, something that you have done before you even turned 25. Like, your frontal lobe isn't developed yet, and you've still been able to reach these, like, really big, like, milestones, essentially. Do you know what I mean? So, like, obviously, like, you're recognising the fact that it does take time, but some people spend their whole life without ever getting to that until they're literally on their deathbed. So I think you should give yourself your flowers.
Oh, thank you. Well, I mean, good guidance. It's really important to have good people around you that can steer you in the right direction. I will not take all the credit, but thank you. But yeah, I think on top of that, part of the struggle with forgiveness is forgiving yourself in different ways. I think people struggle to forgive themselves more than other people when they get hurt, because they then distrust themselves for letting them in, for example, or for letting it get to the point where they've been hurt. I've done that before. Or just forgiving yourself for things you've done in the past, to yourself or to other people. I think you can't really forgive others until you forgive yourself. And that's something that a lot of people need to sit down and think about. Me, myself included. But it lends into different things, your self-love and knowing your worth as well. But I think we are our biggest critics. And until we forgive ourselves, it's even harder to forgive anyone else, and that's a big part of the struggle. I don't know if you've had a similar experience.
With struggling to forgive somebody.
And yourself as well.
Myself, for sure. I think looking back at that period in my life between 13 and 2021, when I called myself a Christian, but I definitely was not going to church or reading the Bible or anything like that. I made a lot of mistakes. I hurt a lot of people. And I think even if you are able to have that conversation with someone and sit down and say, you know what, I'm sorry for these things that I did. And if you're fortunate enough to have that person say to you, either at that point or at some point in the future, okay, I hear where you're coming from and I forgive you, it's still thinking to yourself, firstly, are they telling the truth? And secondly, do I even deserve that? So that is where you have to forgive yourself, like you said, but that is hard. I think the way that I got around it, I did have a big, like, self-hatred period where I was just like, I'm a terrible person, so I'm not even going to bother apologizing because no one should forgive me anyway. And I just wallowed in that self-pity, which was a fun time. But I think I looked at it as, if like the greatest commandment, as we believe, is to know the Lord your God, right? And the second one is to love your neighbor as like the way that God loves you, essentially. So I kind of was like, if God loves me abundantly and endlessly and regardless of what I do, then if I'm loving other people that same way and saying that I believe in all of that, I also have to love myself the same way. Not to obviously an egotistical or point where you're not humble, like point of view, but I can't say like, yes, he died for all of this and this is what I believe, but actually what he died for wasn't worth it because I'm unforgivable, because otherwise that kind of screws up the whole point of him dying on the cross and what I actually believe, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I had to be like, even if I don't believe that I deserve to be loved, I believe that he loves me and he deserves that I should be loved. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how I got around it, and then obviously day by day, it's a bit better. Yeah, I feel like my dad was the hardest one to forgive. He also went and had like multiple kids with other people, and was involved more in their families, and I think that was tough because, you know, it's the thing that we spoke about a little bit at the beginning, which was like, not only have you not apologized, you also aren't atoning. Like, you clearly don't feel bad if you've left one family and gone and started another one. So to me, part of me was like, I think I had 2 stages of forgiveness with him. The first part was, okay, he wasn't ready to be a dad and I can accept that. Then I was able to forgive him for that. He's only a person and, you know, I'm doing life for the first time. He also is. But then the second part was like, wait, so actually you weren't not ready to be a dad. You just weren't ready to be a dad for me. And then I had to forgive him all over again. But I think the second stage taught me a lot more about what forgiveness actually was, because I realised, similar to what you said earlier, that I actually hadn't forgiven him. Like when I sat down with it, I was like, yeah, I've forgiven him. But then when I found out, I was like, oh no, actually I haven't. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's a really amazing step to have taken. I'd say, did it bring you a lot of peace?
Yeah, it did actually. I was able to just sit and be like, you know what? Okay, this is what my life is, and this is how my family dynamic is. And actually, all the things that I've experienced, I wouldn't change it, because if even one thing had been changed, I wouldn't be the person who I am now. But I also think that it allows me to relate to other people. Do you know what I mean? Like, because you get to meet, like you, I've met loads of amazing people at different stages in their lives, and I can look at some of them and be like, oh, you actually really get me because you've been through the same thing that I've been through, and to an extent I'm able to be that person to somebody else. So I think, you know, there's a Bible verse that's like, I paraphrase everything because I need to actually like get in my Bible to be able to be like, James da da da.
Yeah, well, there's different versions anyway.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Yeah.
But there's one that's like, comfort others with the comfort that I've given you. So I think being able to have these people pour into me and help me on my journey of self-love and forgiveness, etc., means that I can then be that person for somebody else. So I think it's like a continuous cycle in Christianity, and, you know, you have a family and that's quite nice.
Yeah, we'll say. I mean, the support network you have is so important. We say it's a journey. Like, you don't go on a journey without food, water, a compass, map. Like, you need other things. It's not just by your own strength.
Yeah.
You know, it's by God's anyway, but it's never by just your own. You need a support network. And it makes all the difference in how easy or difficult it will be to forgive, because you're guided and supported through those decisions if you have the right people around you.
Yeah. As a society, do you think that we place too much emphasis on forgiveness or not enough? That's a big question. So
it is. It depends on the society, really. As a the UK, for example. I mean, forgiveness seems to be based on justice and apologies. And I mean, if you take a look at our legal system, it's a punitive system. It's built on punishment, and that's the idea as to how we get to atonement or kind of reconciliation is through being punished, and then you can be forgiven. But I mean, I disagree with our legal systems. methods anyway, I always believed that you'd be better off kind of focusing on recuperation and redirection than punishment. But it's the same for forgiveness, you know. If you want vengeance, you want revenge, you want punishment, you want somebody to come to their own terms of what they've done, you're placing your forgiveness on a timeline of their own self-realization, which is halting it, you know. You're contingent on their personal growth. And that's a dangerous place to put yourself in, you know. You never want to be dependent on somebody else's journey when you've got your own. So on that level, I would say that there needs to be less focus on the punishment and the person that has the wrongdoer, and more on your own personal experience and feelings. Do you forgive them whether or not they've kind of been punished or just faced justice? It's obviously way more difficult, but you're not doing yourself any favors by waiting. In terms of kind of social media and things, I think it depends on who you surround yourself with. If you're on loads of Christian platforms, and if your TikTok and Instagram are influenced by kind of faith influences, maybe there would be a big focus on forgiveness. I don't really use a lot of social media, to be honest, but I think...
So you ended up on camera today.
I know. Fun fact, I didn't know podcasts were filmed. So here we are. But anyway, if you maybe don't have yourself rooted in faith, social media, or wellness kind of humanitarian social media, then maybe there isn't a big focus on forgiveness. I think current social trends is towards like a cancel culture, like a cut off and move on. Obviously, I agree that people should be taught the error of their ways, but I think it doesn't create a lot of scope for forgiveness. And while it is definitely better for somebody's development to show that they've learned from their mistakes and moved on, your forgiveness, as we've said, can't be contingent on that. It needs to be within itself. Otherwise, it's going to be stunted and potentially you're not going to reach forgiveness. So I don't think as a society we maybe place enough emphasis on forgiveness, and that is because everybody appreciates how hard it is. But I do think we should place more emphasis because it's important and it's just better for everyone if they're able to move on. What do you think?
I think we should teach it in schools more.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. I went to a Catholic school, so it was drilled into us.
I went to a Catholic primary school, but it wasn't really taught in the...
Really?
Not really, no. I mean, I got to secondary school and I was still just, you know, you've done this to me. Like, well, cut you off. I mean, It could have just been my personality, right? But I definitely don't remember being taught about, you know, being taught, okay, you have to forgive people, you have to say sorry if you do something wrong. Obviously, I knew that, but I was never told the reason why, you know? Like, obviously, you're not going to tell a 6-year-old, this is why, but in a more basic way, like, oh, we say sorry, and then, like, you give them a hug, and then you can play with them again type thing. Like, that wasn't taught to me.
But I think that's how it's taught, because, I mean, the same for us, but then what we're being taught is that you need to expect something. You need to expect an apology or a hug.
That's true.
You're being taught that forgiveness is contingent.
Yeah.
And that's obviously probably easier for kids to understand, but you're never taught to get there on your own. Maybe that's not the only way to get there or the best way to get there. I am just speaking on my own personal opinion. But the way society views forgiveness is that it's transactional. And then we approach the situation with this in mind, like, you haven't done this, so I'm not going to give this. But forgiveness is not what you gift someone. I mean, they are forgiven, but forgiveness is what you gift yourself, right?
Yeah.
So the societal focus needs to deviate away from the transactional nature of what it's been taught as. But then I think that's just an inherent part of capitalism, and that's the world we live in.
That's another episode.
Yeah, that's another story.
But no, I like the fact you said forgiveness is transactional, and that, like, as in that's how we view it as a society, because I think that's so true.
Yeah.
And I guess that in reframing forgiveness as something that's an active decision you have to make, in the same way that we're taught in the Bible that to love isn't just a feeling, it's also an action
Yeah.
that you have to take. Like Jesus died for every single person, regardless of whether they believe in him, believe in a different God, don't believe in him, actively curse his name. So that was the most selfless, non-transactional example of forgiveness that we have as a example, right?
Yeah, on the one hand. On the other, maybe it was the transaction.
Ooh.
He died so none of us have to. He gave himself, and in return we got grace, we got reconciliation with God. So now it shouldn't be transactional because the biggest transaction's taken place, potentially.
Yeah.
But then obviously if that's the way you view it, then that's the model people would take. But then you'd be, you can't take that model because no one's God. No one's worthy of the transaction except God, potentially. So anybody else that's assuming the transaction is maybe emboldening themselves too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, both ways, either or, you get to the same place, right?
Yeah.
That it needs to be selfless. It needs to be of itself, self-contained. And I guess that reflects what forgiveness is. It's a pure feeling. It's difficult because purification is difficult,
Yeah. So, last question for anyone out there who's struggling with forgiveness, or healing, or both. What would your last words be?
So, I mean, from a Christian point of view, the answer is always going to be prayer. It is different in different belief systems. I mean, the Catholic Church has something called reconciliation, which is for kind of younger children to do before they have communion. But there's also confession. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah.
You go to church, you tell a priest in a confession booth all your sins, and then you forgive however many times they tell you to say a prayer. You say that many and then you're forgiven, or you say the rosary. Whereas kind of in my other church, in a lot of churches, more like Protestant-based churches, forgiveness is just if you ask for it through prayer and you act on it. Kind of, it needs to be in your heart, not just in your words. But I think for people that aren't religious, you could try prayer, or if you have a different faith. But I think even from a kind of self-love, kind of motivational, humanitarian point of view, if you sit down and think about it in a kind of common sense way, what's happened to me? How do I feel? What do I want to feel? Are they likely to apologize or not? Probably not. I'm not sure. Do I need, that apology? Is it actually going to change anything? Or would I want to kind of change how I feel right now and be able to move on? Because I genuinely do believe, I mean, forgiveness is so hard, but it is liberating. Once you get there, you're free from that feeling.
Yeah.
You don't have it weighing you down. If that's your goal, you can wait, and it is a process, and I'm not rushing anyone. As I said, I'm on it myself, but if you know where you're going, then why don't you go there?
Yeah. I like that. Cool. So yeah, that is the end of the episode.
Thank you for having me.
No
My
problem.
first podcast.
I know. I'm honoured that I was the first of all your friends. Thank you very much.
I'll say.
So next week we're going to be looking at the cost of Christianity and all the things that we're called to give up and what that actually looks like in practice. So thank you guys for tuning in today. This hoodie is from this really cool studio called 2C Studios here. You should check it out. I'm going to put a link in the bio. So thanks to them for sending me this cool piece. And yeah, this has been Jesus All Bucks, the podcast, questions without limits, answers without judgment. Thank you for joining the conversation, and I will see you next time. Bye.
Bucks and Crocs.
Bucks and Crocs. Like, subscribe, comment, and text me on email or DM and let me know your opinions and all that stuff. Bye.